Hello students, welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Welcome to a session on economy this week, wherein we will be taking up some of the very important articles that have appeared in various business related newspapers and we'll be analyzing these particular articles. For this particular video, the time period that I've chosen is from 10th of November to 24th of November 2019, and the articles that I've chosen are from Business Line, Hindu, Business Standard, Indian Express and Live Mint. Let's begin the discussion. The first article is associated with the concept of ENAM. Some of the very important points that you need to understand are: 1. Agriculture marketing is a state subject. That is basically under the Constitution of India, especially under the 7th schedule, the Constitution has divided the powers between central government as well as the state government. One of the subject, that is agriculture marketing, is basically listed under the state list. Hence, the state government should formulate the laws or the policies related to the concept of agriculture marketing. Having said so, what is the role of the central government in this particular concept? Central government usually proposes the concept of a model law, and these particular model laws will either have to be implemented in the same form or in certain amended form by the state governments. Under this particular concept itself, you need to understand the idea of APMC. And if you can understand the idea of APMC and the issues related to APMC, then you will be able to connect that with the idea of a National Agriculture Market. APMC basically stands for Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee, wherein the state governments will be given the power to identify or notify certain regions, and within these particular regions, they will be identifying or notifying certain crops. Now understand the concept here. Within this particular region or notified region, whatever are the notified crops, these particular crops will have to be sold in a mandi or a market, which is basically referred as APMC. Under this particular concept, the state governments will be formulating these particular laws, will be implementing these particular laws. Since these are the laws which are formulated and implemented by the state government, the APMC law will slightly differ from one state to another state. For example, what are the crops covered? What is the concept of infrastructure funding by the state government? So on and so forth. Now, this particular concept of APMC was introduced, but this particular idea has not worked very well or very satisfactorily. The logic of introducing the idea of APMC was to ensure that large number of producers or cultivators, or in simple terms farmers, will be getting access to a market wherein large number of buyers will be available. And since large number of buyers as well as the sellers are coming together, price discovery will be better. Farmers or the cultivators will be getting better returns for their crops which are sold in this particular market. This was a very important objective with which the APMC acts were introduced. But over a period of time, there have been certain concerns or issues which are plaguing the functioning of APMC. For example, in the APMC or the mandis, we do not have sufficient storage infrastructure. As per one of the Planning Commission reports, it has been found that the storage or warehousing facility in the mandis is only 30% of the actual requirement. Another issue has been the concept of grading the crops. That is basically packaging these particular crops as per the grades and selling them in the market. The grading infrastructure in this particular APMC mandis is very less. The same report of the Planning Commission also makes a note that only 7% of the crops which are sold through the mandis are actually graded. So warehousing capacity is very less, grading infrastructure is very less. Third, whenever traders wanted to trade in these particular mandis, they were supposed to take multiple licenses when they were supposed to trade in multiple mandis. What do you mean by this? Let's say hypothetically, here is one APMC mandi and here is another one APMC mandi. Now, if the same trader wants to trade in both of these particular mandis, they were supposed to take two different licenses. That was the third concern. Fourth concern, price discovery was not happening in the real time. That is, in simple terms, what were the prices discovered for the same crops were dissimilar in different markets. In one market, it was sold at a better price. In the neighboring market, it was sold at a much lesser price. As a result of this, the farmers or the cultivators were unable to earn the right remunerative prices. But more importantly, as per one of the reports or surveys which was conducted by Mr. Ashok Gulati, who is the former chairman of CACP, Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices, has noted that the farmers or the cultivators were able to recover only around 25% of the prices paid finally by the consumer for the same crop. What do you mean by this? Let me give an example. Let's assume here is a farmer. He takes his produce, sells it to a buyer in a market, who in turn sells this particular crop to a consumer in the retail market. If the consumer pays 100 rupees for this particular crop, the farmer recovered only 25 rupees, or the buyer here bought this particular crop from the farmer only at 25 rupees. So the recovery rates was very low for the farmers. The whole objective of having an APMC to have or to ensure better recovery prices for the farmers was getting defeated. So keeping in mind all these particular issues, Government of India introduced the concept of e-National Agriculture Market or Electronic National Agriculture Market, wherein the concept was very simple. Rather than the farmer taking this particular produce to the market or physical market, he would get the quality certification for these particular crops, get these particular crops listed in this particular platform. And in this particular platform, along with this particular farmer, there will be multiple farmers who will also be selling their produce, and there will be multiple buyers who will be bidding for this particular produce as per their requirement. Another advantage of this particular e-NAM is that the buyer could be from one region and the seller could be from another region. Earlier the problem was, if I want to purchase a particular crop and if I am from, let's say, state X, and this particular crop is being sold in state Y, then I'll have to go to state Y, get a license, and then start trading or purchasing these particular crops there. But under the concept of e-NAM, a single license is what is required, and throughout India you can trade in this particular platform using this particular single license. So the buyers will get access to multiple markets, and the sellers need not have to take these particular crops physically to these particular markets in different states. So the market will get widened, the accessibility both for the buyers as well as the sellers will increase, and more importantly, the issue with the middleman will be resolved by implementing this particular concept of e-NAM. So these are some of the very important points you need to understand this particular article. Now what is given in this particular article? Since the central government has introduced this particular concept of e-NAM, it wants all the states to shift their trading of agriculture commodities under the concept of e-NAM itself. But this article quotes that there are certain issues with respect to this concept of e-NAM. For example, this article says that out of around 12 crore plus farmers in India, only around 1.6 crore farmers have actually started trading under the concept of e-NAM or under the platform of e-NAM. And within this particular 1.6 crore farmers, only around half of the farmers have actually got the benefit under the idea of e-NAM. That is one issue. And second issue which has been raised under this particular concept is the experts do not know whether the system will be able to handle this kind of a pressure when all the farmers or the traders start trading using the same platform of e-NAM. This is a second concern which has been raised. Apart from this, some of the states have already flat out refused to join the e-NAM. For example, the state of Karnataka. The state of Karnataka already has its own platform which is REMS, Rashtriya E-Marketing Services. And it has been found that the charges which the farmers will have to pay under REMS is much lesser. The price discovery mechanism under REMS is much better. The farmers are able to generate better revenues under the idea of REMS itself. As a result of this, the state government of Karnataka has basically stated that it wants to continue with the same system rather than taking this particular system under the concept of e-NAM. So these are some of the points which have been mentioned in this particular article. Now based on this particular discussion, let's have a look at a question. Consider the following statements. Agriculture marketing is a state subject. Yes, it is correct. e-NAM was launched in 2016. Yes, it is also correct. Some of the facts are, under idea of e-NAM, 585 APMCs so far have been merged. These particular APMCs are basically from the same state, that is which will facilitate intrastate trading, and some of these particular APMC mandis are also interstate, that is between two states. So e-NAM was launched in 2016. Yes, it is correct. Right option will be option C. Both the statements are true. The next article is related to concept of inland waterways. Now some of the very important points are: 1. For the freight transportation, there are different modes of transportation available. We have road transportation, we have air transportation, we also have railways transportation, we have waterway transportation or inland waterway mode of transportation. Now, immediately after independence, majority of the freight transportation in case of India was done through railways. As per various surveys, around 90% of the freight transportation just after independence was conducted through railways. But over a period of time, the usage of railways as a mode of transportation has reduced, and the usage of roadways as a mode of freight transportation has actually increased. As per various surveys, today the road transportation in terms of the freight accounts for more than 60% of the total freight transportation, and railways accounts for another 30%, and around 7% of the transportation of freight actually in case of India happens through inland waterways. The total length of navigable waterways in India is around 14,500 kilometers. And Government of India, in order to increase this particular concept of inland waterways, has passed Inland Waterways Act, under which it has proposed to develop 111 waterways. A total of 111 national waterways will be developed, which will be used as a mode of transportation. Now, why this is important? It is important for a simple reason. When inland waterways or waterways are used as a mode of transportation, the cost of transportation will be reduced. The emissions related to transportation or as a result of transportation will be reduced. The efficiency of the fuel consumption will be increased. All of this will basically add to the objective of Government of India to promote India as a manufacturing hub. Now, why this is also very important? Government of India has launched various schemes to promote manufacturing, but one area where Government of India needs to work is the idea of a transportation, or I'll put it in general terms, logistics sector. Please understand, goods will be manufactured and then sold in the market. And when they're sold in the market, either in the domestic market or in the international market, the MRP or the selling price will be having multiple components. And one very important component which will determine the selling price is the transportation cost. In case of India, the transportation costs are on a higher side. This article quotes that the transportation cost in case of India account for 18% of the cost at which the goods are sold in the market. Whereas in other countries, they account for around 9 to 10%, especially in developed economies. Now, one of the ways to promote the international competitiveness of India's exports is to ensure that these are price competitive. And one of the ways of reducing the market price of these particular goods will be to address the issue of logistics. And various reforms have been taken by Government of India already in order to address this particular issue of logistics. For example, Government of India has implemented GST, and under the ambit of a GST, the idea of the checkpost at the interstate borders have been wiped off or have been dismantled. As a result of this, the trucks which are carrying this particular freight or cargo are passing from one state to another state at a faster pace. And when these particular trucks are passing from one state to another state, the stoppage times are going to come down. When the stoppage time is going to come down, the total time taken for transportation is going to come down. The trucks are going to travel more per day, as a result of which the cost associated with logistics is also going to come down. So this is one reform which has been taken by Government of India in order to promote the logistics sector in India. Another very important reform has been Sagarmala, a project wherein port-led development is the objective. Under this particular objective of Sagarmala, this article says that 125 projects have been completed, and these particular 125 projects cost more than 31,000 crore rupees. This is another very important reform which has been taken by Government of India in the logistics sector. Again, what is the connection between Sagarmala with the logistics or with the manufacturing in India? Please understand, 95% of the trade which is conducted between India with the rest of the world is done through basically the ports. And when Government of India promotes the idea of a Sagarmala, it is going to promote the infrastructure in the port sector itself, which is going to help in addressing these particular issues or in achieving the objective of promoting the manufacturing sector. Now, coming at some of the important points which are mentioned in this particular article. This article quotes that though waterways is the most efficient or most cost-effective mode of transportation, in case of India, a small fraction of the total freight transportation actually happens through the waterways. Whereas in case of China, it is more than 20% of the total freight. In case of Germany, it is more than 11% of the total freight transportation. So Government of India should take more reforms in order to address these particular issues which are plaguing this particular sector to promote the waterways mode of transportation. Now, what are the concerns or challenges related to promoting this idea of waterways? One, the cost of infrastructure or developing the infrastructure is on a higher side. That has been one issue. Second is there is a need of a constant dredging process which has to be conducted, because we are basically using water as a mode of transportation, and when the river water travels from one point to another point, it will carry the fine soil particles and will basically deposit in the lower regions. As a result of this, the depth of the channel will become lesser and lesser. So there is a need of continuous dredging process which has to be conducted by the government, which again involves cost. And the third concern with respect to promoting inland waterways in case of India is the water is seasonal, or a draft in case of these particular rivers are seasonal. In case of India, I'm pretty sure you must have read this already. There is a segment of rivers which are called as northern rivers or Himalayan rivers, and there is also southern rivers. One of the very important distinguishing character between these two sets of rivers is that in case of northern rivers or Himalayan rivers, the water flow is perennial or draft is perennial, whereas in case of southern rivers, the draft is seasonal. And when the draft is seasonal, it is very difficult to use these particular routes or rivers as a mode of inland waterways transportation. These are some of the challenges which are mentioned in this particular article. So Government of India in the coming days has to address these particular issues, promote inland waterways as a favorite mode of transportation. How it can be done? One, the article says that Government of India should start incentivizing any of the sectors or industries which start using this as a mode of transportation. Second, Government of India has set up a road development fund in the year 2000, under which government imposes certain cesses on some form of a diesel as well as petrol, collects these particular cesses, deposits into this particular road development fund, and these particular funds can be used for developing national highways, state highways as well as inland waterways. So Government of India should start utilizing these particular funds to develop inland waterways. And those particular sectors or industries which are around these particular coastal regions should be prompted to start utilizing the inland waterways as a mode of transportation. These are some of the recommendations which are given in this particular article. Now, based on this particular discussion, let's have a look at some of the questions. Consider the following statements. India has 14,500 kilometers of navigable waters. Yes. Road transportation accounts for 33% of the freight transportation. Wrong. It is more than 60% now. Inland Waterways Authority of India was set up in the year 1986. Yes, it is correct. So, point 1, point 3 are correct. Right option will be option C. Only 1 and 3 are true. Next question. Consider the following statements. Central Road Fund Act 2000 regulates Central Road Fund. Yes, correct. The fund is credited with cess collected on petrol and high-speed diesel oil. It's true. These funds can be used for developing national highways only. Underline the term only. This is wrong. As already mentioned, it can be used for developing national highways, state highways, as well as inland waterways. So point 1, point 2 are correct. Right option will be option B. Only 1 and 2 are true. I've also given a descriptive question. If India wants to be a global manufacturing hub, then one of the areas to be looked into is the logistics sector. Discuss the reforms undertaken by the government in the logistics sector and its importance in 250 words. So these are the questions related to the article on inland waterways. Next article is related to insolvency and bankruptcy code. Now, the idea of insolvency and bankruptcy code basically provides insolvency resolution for the companies which take loan and default on the loan, and also the retail borrowers who default on their repayment. So, to address the insolvency resolution or to oversee the insolvency resolution in case of the companies who default on the payment, we have an authority of NCLT. And in case of retail borrowers, there is an authority of DRT, Debt Recovery Tribunal. Now the focus is always on the corporate insolvency resolution, and for UPSC this is more important. So one of the reforms which was undertaken very recently by Government of India was that they amended certain provisions under the insolvency and bankruptcy code and changed the time period for insolvency resolution from 270 days to 330 days. Now, what do you mean by this particular concept? Now, please understand, under the insolvency resolution process, here is a lender and here is a borrower. If the borrower doesn't repay the loan, either he or the lender or creditor can approach the NCLT, National Company Law Tribunal. NCLT will be appointing an insolvency professional. Insolvency professional will be putting together the committee of creditors, which is formed of the secured creditors. Now the committee of creditors will decide whether to liquidate the company or to sell off the company. And this particular decision of the committee of creditors will be conveyed to the NCLT, which will issue the order to put this particular decision into effect. This is a basic process of insolvency resolution for corporate defaulters. Now the problem with respect to this particular process was, earlier Government of India basically said this particular process of insolvency resolution should be completed within 180 days, and if there is a need for extension, an extension of 90 days could be provided. In simple terms, the insolvency resolution process shall be completed within 270 days. But over a period of time, with implementation of IBC, it was found that it was very difficult to meet this particular deadline of 270 days. What is the problem? Problem was, some of the creditors during the process of deliberations in the committee of creditors would simply approach judiciary, and when they approach the judiciary, the proceedings of committee of creditors would come to a halt. The number of days would keep on increasing. As a result of this, the 270-day limit which was provided by the government would be breached. Now, what is the issue with respect to breaching this 270-day time limit? Please understand this. Some of the creditors would be banks here, that is the people who have given loans, or the lenders to the companies would be banks, and these particular banks would be charging certain interest based on the rate of interest. Now, please understand this particular point very carefully. Once this particular case has been filed against the borrower under the NCLT, and NCLT accepts the case against the borrower, the calculation of interest by these particular banks would stop. I'll repeat the statement. Once the case against the borrower has been accepted by the NCLT, the calculation of interest would be stopped by the banks. Now, within 270 days, if the insolvency resolution process is done, the bank's loss of interest will be very minimal. Now, in majority of the cases under insolvency and bankruptcy code, this particular time limit of 270 days has been breached because some of the creditors are unhappy with how the proceedings are happening in the committee of creditors. They run to judiciary, file a petition, then the proceedings will come to a halt. The time limit of 270 days will be breached. The banks will lose the interest. To overcome this particular issue, Government of India introduced amendments to Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code very recently. Under this particular amendments, one of the very important amendment was fixing the time limit to 330 days. That is, now Government of India basically said 270 days as usual as per the earlier provision, and if some of the creditors go to judiciary appealing against the proceedings of committee of creditors, then the judiciary must resolve this particular issue within the next 60 days, which would take the total time period for insolvency resolution proceedings to be completed to 330 days. Now, this particular case was taken up by the Supreme Court of India, and the Supreme Court of India has stated that this particular timeline of 330 days cannot be put across all the cases. In simple terms, cannot be applied uniformly to all the cases. In some of the cases, the time limit of 330 days will be allowed to be breached, but with certain conditions. Now, what is the condition put forward by the Supreme Court? Supreme Court basically says, if parties involved in the process can prove to NCLT that because of the litigation or because of the tardy legal process, the time left for resolution is very less, then the time limit can be extended to even beyond 330 days. Because what usually happens is, if the creditors do not come to a conclusion or do not arrive at a decision within this particular specified time period, then by default, the company will get liquidated. Supreme Court says, in this particular case, some of the creditors will be unfairly losing money. Hence, in certain cases, if these particular creditors can prove that because of these issues, there is a delay and there is going to be a breach of 330 days time limit, then they will allow this particular breach also. Apart from this, Supreme Court of India also has stated that this particular time limit of 330 days, if applied uniformly for all the cases, it would be violating Article 14 as well as Article 19 1G of Indian Constitution. So these are some of the very important points which are mentioned in this particular article. Let's look at the next article, which is related to IIP. Some of the very important points are: 1. IP basically stands for Index of Industrial Production. This particular index basically measures what is the volume changes in three particular areas or three particular sectors. 1. Manufacturing. Second, mining. And third one is electricity. I'll repeat the statement again. Index of industrial production basically measures what is the volume change of a production within these particular three areas. Of these three areas, manufacturing sector has got the highest weightage, around 77%. Mining sector has got around 14% plus, and electricity sector has got the lowest weightage of 8% plus. So these are the weightages given to these three sectors within this particular concept of an index of industrial production. Third point, it is published monthly by Central Statistical Organization or CSO. Again, I am saying, please make a note, we do not have a CSO now, we have an NSO. Because earlier we had a CSO as a different entity and we also had NSSO, National Sample Survey Organization. Both of these have been merged to form NSO, National Statistical Organization. So right now we have NSO, but majority of the books will still say that CSO calculates and publishes Index of Industrial Production monthly. And fourth very important point, please understand the base year for the calculation of IIP is 2011 and 12. Earlier the base year was 2004 and 5. Very recently it has been changed to 2011 and 12. Now why calculation of IIP is very important? Whenever the growth of any economy or productivity of any economy is measured, it will be measured in terms of agriculture or primary sector, manufacturing or secondary sector, and services or tertiary sector. A substantial part of contribution to growth comes from manufacturing in India. Now, if the manufacturing activity in the economy increases, it usually leads to what? Higher growth rate for the Indian economy. In the recent time period, what we have seen is there is a slowdown in GDP growth rate, and we are also seeing there is a slowdown in the growth rate in the secondary sector, which is reflected in the slippage or the slowdown in the IIP. As per this particular article, it says that for the month of August, there was a contraction in the IIP growth rate of 1.1%, and it has continued even in the second month, that is in the month of September, it has contracted to 4.3%, which indicates that there is again slowdown in the manufacturing activity, which basically will indicate that there might be lesser GDP growth rate for the present quarter as well as the coming quarters. The article also states that this particular contraction in the IIP is because of the contraction in manufacturing activity, because of the contraction in the mining activity, as well as in the electricity activity. In all the three sectors, there has been a contraction. Now, one of the reasons there is a contraction in the activity is the demand from the industries, let's say for consumption of electricity, has come down. Demand from automobile sector for consumption of electricity also has come down. Apart from this, one other reason why there is a slowdown or contraction in IIP has been quoted as the delayed retrieval of monsoon has led to a slowdown or the contraction in the real estate activity. As a result of all of these particular factors coming together, there has been a contraction in IIP, which experts say is a very good indicator that the growth in the coming quarter might be less than 5%. So these are some of the points which are mentioned in this particular article. So based on this particular discussion, let's have a look at some of the questions. Consider the following statements. Base year for IIP is 0405. Wrong. It is 11 and 12 now. IIP is published by NSO. Correct. So based on this, the right option will be option B. Only 2 is true. Next question. Which of the following has the highest weightage in the calculation of index of industrial production? We have already seen it is manufactured items around 77% plus. Next question. Arrange the following item groups in the ascending order of their weightage in the IIP. It means I'll have to start from the lowest weightage to the highest weightage. The lowest weightage in IIP is given for electricity. Second highest is mining and the highest is manufacturing. So right sequence will be 2, 1 and 3. So right option is option D, 2, 1, 3. The next article is related to oilseed sector. Some of the very important points are: 1. The households usually consume multiple type of food items. One food item which is majorly consumed by the households is vegetable oils. Now, what is the situation of vegetable oils in India? In the last couple of years, the total land that is used for cultivation of vegetable oils or oilseeds has got stagnated. As per this particular article, it quotes that this land which is used for cultivation of oilseeds has stagnated at around 26 million hectares. Third point, not only the land used for cultivation has got stagnated, even the total production of oilseeds in case of India has got stagnated. As per this article, it is around 30 million tons. Fourth point, India not only produces the oil or vegetable oils in the domestic market, it also imports a huge amount of vegetable oils from rest of the world. Two major exporters of oils or vegetable oils to India are Malaysia and Indonesia. Fifth, India annually spends around $10 billion or up to or over 70,000 crore rupees in order to import these vegetable oils to meet the domestic demand for this. Now, Government of India has set an objective of doubling the income of the farmers, and one of the areas to double the income of the farmers is to ensure that farmers get better remunerative prices by producing oilseeds. So Government of India wants to promote more and more domestic production of oilseeds, which will not only provide better remunerative prices for the farmers, will also address the import issue of these particular vegetable oils. One problem which has been quoted in this particular article is the policy of importing this particular vegetable oils. It says that Government of India does not have any kind of a consolidated framework. It keeps on changing how much has to be imported, what tariff has to be imposed on these particular oils, so on and so forth. For example, last year itself, the tariff or custom duties on the palm oil which was imported from Malaysia was increased from 45% to 50%. What was the reason? Reason was, it was found that palm oil imports from this particular country suddenly surged in the last 3 years by more than 314%. As a result of this, it started harming the domestic market. Hence, Government of India imposed tariffs or increased the tariffs on these particular palm oil imports from this particular country. So basically, this article says that Government of India, in order to address the issue of vegetable oils or oilseed sector in India, has to implement short-term reforms as well as long-term reforms. For example, in short term, Government of India should look into the import policy. Article says there is no other way but to continue to import these particular oils from the rest of the world. But the issue is that some of the traders in the market are basically speculating the tariff changes by the government and are basically making profits based on these particular speculations. And around 10% plus of these particular imports are based on the speculative purposes only. So the article says that in short term, Government of India should start looking at imposing certain import ceilings so that these particular speculative practices in order to make quick bucks will be prohibited. And in the long term, Government of India should promote usage of technology, usage of R&D in this particular sector so that the production will increase, productivity will also increase. Apart from this, this article also states that one of the ways to increase the land used for cultivation would be to ensure that market prices of these particular oilseeds will increase. Now, how that can be done? Government of India already announces MSP for these oilseeds. But this article says that Government of India should put certain import ceilings on these particular oilseeds. The supply of these particular oilseeds in the market, there will be a constraint on this. And when there is a shortage of supply, the market prices will start increasing. And when the market prices will increase, the farmers will look at these particular prices and will start shifting to cultivation of more and more of these particular oilseeds. As a result of this, more cultivation will take place, more supply will take place. The dependence on the imports of these particular vegetable oils will also reduce. So these are some of the very important points which are discussed in this particular article. Now based on this, let's have a look at some questions. Consider the following statements. India imports 2/3 of its vegetable oils consumption. It's correct. Majority of its vegetable oil imports come from Indonesia and Malaysia. Even this is true. India has an FTA with Malaysia. Even this is true. Now some of you will think that what is the connection between the third statement and the discussion that we have had so far? As already mentioned, majority of oil imports, especially vegetable oil imports, will come from Indonesia and Malaysia. But very recently these two countries were in discussion with respect to the vegetable oil imports in India. What is the discussion? As already mentioned, Government of India increased its tariff on the import of palm oil from Malaysia. And Malaysia enjoys certain privileges with respect to exports of these particular vegetable oils when compared to Indonesia. For a simple reason, Malaysia has an FTA with India, that is free trade agreement. Under this particular FTA, Malaysia enjoys certain privileges with respect to export of these particular oils to India compared to Indonesia. So based on this particular discussion, option D, 1, 2 and 3 are true. So these are the various articles as well as the questions related to these particular articles for this particular time period. Thank you. Have a good day.